Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But if you're ready to level up your life and get results that truly matter in your health, business, mindset, and relationships, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to Scheer Madness, where we have unscripted, real conversations with the world's top athletes, entrepreneurs, and coaches. Discover real-world and tactical advice from the best in the business. Let's go. Hey everyone, I am Rachel Scheer, and I am your host of the Scheer Madness podcast. Today I have with me, who in my opinion is one of the most influential and impactful people on the internet today. Not only does he have a social media following of over 12 million, reaching over 60 million people weekly through his videos, he is also an author, motivational speaker, past Baylor football player, NFL football player, and an incredible husband and father of three. Trent Shelton, everybody.
Hello, Rachel. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. As you know, I've been trying to get you on, just because I got to hear you earlier this year at Thrive in Las Vegas. Yeah. And I was actually able to hear you speak on stage at that event. And it was a very interesting time, I'll say, for myself. And getting to hear you speak, I was going through a time in my life where I was actually going through a lot of heartbreak, a lot of my own struggles. I had just walked out of a 5.5-year relationship where it left me feeling a lot of not like I wasn't good enough, just a lot of negative self-talk. And I remember I was sitting up in my hotel room in Las Vegas, and I was actually crying that entire afternoon. And I was at this event where I was surrounded around hundreds of influential people, and it was supposed to be exciting. And after I got to hear you speak, it impacted me on a very deep level. And I was able to connect with you with your story, and it helped me tremendously. So I can attest to the impact that you're making because of how it's impacted my life. So I can only imagine the impact that you're making in million other people's lives. So for those who don't know your story, can you tell them a little bit about how you got started as a motivational speaker and built this incredible platform that you have today?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for what you do, and we all have a story, and for you to go through what you went through and for you to bounce back, that's not easy at all. So it takes a lot of power. And so I commend you for that and what you do, and it's inspiration to others. My story, I don't want to take the whole hour talking about it, but basically, football was my everything. And so for people watching this, whatever that everything is, sometimes it's a relationship, it's a job. And that was my everything since I was 4 or 5 years old. And so for me, there was nothing outside of football that was success for me. That was it. And so kind of fast forward a bit, outstanding athlete in Louisiana where I lived. So I was in middle school, moved to Texas, Fort Worth, outstanding athlete, went to Baylor, redshirt in my first year.
Bears.
There we go. All Big 12, all these things. And, my uncle actually, he's still coaching the NFL. And so he was kind of giving me feedback. It's like, hey, you're probably going to be a 4th, 5th round pick. When I was with Atlanta, they really loved you. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, cool. 4th, 5th round pick. My life is going to be good. Everything is going right. That was the direct opposite. I remember watching the draft and my name didn't get called. And it's kind of sucks because you're sitting there around your family. And I didn't expect to get called in the first day because I knew I wasn't a 1st to 3rd round pick. Baylor was struggling at that time. And so I knew, maybe 4th or 5th round. That came around and my name wasn't called. And so people are texting me and my mom is asking me, are you all right? And I'm faking it. I'm good when I'm not good, like we always do. And 6th round came, 7th round came, my name didn't get called. And so immediately when I look back on my story, my journey, I didn't really understand it then, but that was the first time where I felt like I wasn't enough because my whole entire life, I've always succeeded. Get a lot of calls as a free agent. I'm a high priority free agent. That means that a lot of teams probably would have drafted you, but they didn't, but they really want you on your team. Got a chance to go with the Colts after my uncle's counsel with Coach Dungy being there, which is a great man. I mean, Coach Dungy is incredible all around. Great coach, great man, great person. My uncle was like, he's going to give you a fair shake, so go there. Went there, and my whole preseason was great. I like, I'm not just saying this, but I balled out. I mean, actually, my first preseason game was in the old Cowboys Stadium in Irving. I scored a touchdown there. So I'm like, okay, I'm good. And my whole preseason was that. It gets to the fourth preseason game. They don't really play me. It's like, this is weird. So either I'm going to make the team or maybe they don't like me. A veteran comes to me and he's like, hey, man, they're going to hide you. So what they're going to do is you're like a project. They're going to practice squad you, and then they're going to hopefully build you up to get you ready. That happened. I get cut. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'll be on a practice squad, but I can go get my car now. I'll go get all this stuff that I didn't have the money to get, but that was the first time I ever seen that type of money. So I'm like, I'm good. Buy the car, buy all these things that were externally impressing other people because I'm from Fort Worth. Not a lot of people make it here. And so when I get back in town, I got to show people that I made it. So I buy $10,000 rims, all these things, get my apartment in Indy. I end up getting a call. I remember we call it Terrible Tuesday. That's the day where you either get signed or you get cut. And if you're on the team, if they call you on Tuesday and tell you to bring your playbook, you know what's going to happen. That happened. I was at the bank actually, and I thought it was a joke. And I was like, I didn't understand that then. So I brought my playbook and I was like, maybe they want to give me some more plays or something. He's like, hey, we appreciate you. This is always the speech from the NFL. Like, it's a numbers game. We love you. They give you this this great speech to make you feel good about getting cut. I had to drive from Indy back to Texas, which is 14 hours. And if you ever got fired before, you know how much that sucks. But if you got to drive that long with your thoughts, I'm just like, man. So I get back home and I immediately bottle myself up in my mom's house in my room, because if I go out, it's September. People are going to ask, what are you here for? Why are you at home? Aren't you supposed to be playing on TV? So I stay in my room. And that's when I started suppressing things, right? That's when I was running from my reality, which I'm sure we'll talk about. I was running from it. And I was teaching myself not to face it. I was teaching myself not to deal with it. And I started doing things that wasn't a reflection of who I was as a person. I would take certain drugs. I would do I would drink certain liquor, all these things, go out, and nothing against people who are going out and having a good time. But for me, it was my way of dealing with my pain.
It's a numbing tool.
Exactly.
To an extent, yeah.
And so make a long story short, I ended up getting called back 2 weeks later. And that was my whole career. I probably got cut 9 or 10 times, 3 different teams, 3 different years. And that's when I hit my rock bottom. And in that moment of me getting cut, also get a woman pregnant. She's not my wife, but I get a woman pregnant at that time that wasn't my girlfriend. And so now I'm thinking about what's going on? I'm a pastor's son. It's not how it's supposed to go. And to fast forward a little bit, I was looking not at Tristan, but at that moment as a disappointment. But it's funny how that disappointment was my greatest rescue, because that moment, Tristan, he saved my life. He changed everything for me. So that's kind of my story with football, a brief version of it.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people go through something similar. I can relate to that, where you feel like your life is going one direction. You have everything planned out for you. You feel like this is your sole purpose.
Yeah.
And that when that gets taken away from us, we feel like almost we lose our purpose, and we lose ourself in the process, which leads to depression, anxiety, and us turning to other things. For some people, maybe drugs, alcohol, it could be social media, it could be any outlook or what we're using essentially as a numbing tool. So I think a lot of people can relate to that when they feel like they lose themselves, whether that be a relationship, whether that be a title, whether that be a job. They lose that, and then they lose themselves in the process.
Yeah.
So for you, I think you're also kind of in this place of an unknown. And I think a lot of people struggle being in this place of the unknown. We all want to know where our future is going. We all want to be like, okay, I'm going to be an NFL football player, and this is where I'm going to go. And then my life is going to go this way. And then it doesn't go that way. And then we're in this place of unknown. And that causes a lot of anxiety. And I wanted to ask you, how long do you think we can stay in this place of unknown before we decide we need to make a decision with where our life is going? Because we're not going to ultimately always be able to plan ahead, to get rid of that anxiety, but just being in that place of unknown.
Well, this is the thing. When you're not making a choice to change, and this is, I get this all the time. Trent, it's easier said than done, right? Everything in life is. But when you don't make a choice, life is deciding for you. And I think not making a choice like quicksand. You're sinking deeper and deeper in it. And sometimes people never recover from it because they get so engulfed in pain. It's okay, this is my life. I'm going to accept it. And what's crazy, and I understand this fully because I was this person, is that we would rather stay in a known pain, right?
Yeah.
We would rather stay in because it's comfortable. It's like, at least I know what I'm getting from this, than move into an unknown, whatever, growth, peace. And what really helped me was understanding, like, I didn't care. I didn't know where I was going with my life. I didn't know I would be a speaker. I didn't know I would, like, I'm an introverted person. I had
Yeah.
no idea this would be it, but I knew where I didn't want to stay anymore. Like, I knew, okay, this isn't it. Like, if do I want to die unhappy? Do I want to die unfulfilled? And my answer was absolutely no. And so I'm going to move forward with my life and focus on the things that I can control, whatever that is. And for me, it was literally mind, body, and soul. And that's when I came up with the word rehab time, because I was like, okay, it's so funny. I don't know if it was, like I always say, I don't know if it was Rihanna at the time singing like Checking in the Rehab or whatever song it was, but the word rehab really stuck with me. And I just know with sports, when you get injured, you go to rehab.
Yeah.
And rehab is hard. You know what I mean? Especially when you want to come back quicker. And I've done it before where I'm in rehab and I'm impatient. And I come back and I'm hurt even more. So it's like life is the same way, whether you're dealing with a broken heart or a lost dream or vision. You have to trust the process and be patient and take your time. And so I said, what can I control? Well, my mind. I didn't like reading books. And it's so funny that I have a book now that I've written, and I read books all the time now, but I didn't read books at all. I was like, I'm not reading a book at all. I picked up books. I did what was uncomfortable for me. Because you have people now, it's like, I'm not reading. But in order to grow, you have to obtain knowledge you don't have. So why not do it? I start taking care of my fitness to a whole nother level. Like, I let go of everything that was keeping me from being the greatest me. So I stopped going out, I stopped drinking, I stopped hanging around certain people, and I focused on bettering my body. And then my soul, my spiritual walk, I dove into my word more. Like, I cut out so many things that took away, that were draining my spirit. And so I would challenge people watching this, like, what can you control that's in your control? Because so many times we think about all these external things and we don't focus on our internal selves.
I like that a lot. Like, what can we control? Because oftentimes I think a lot of the anxiety comes from wanting to control other people and wanting to control the outcome, and just being in denial about where our life is at and where we expected it to go. And we just create this anxiety, and just looking at the situation like, what can I control? And it ultimately comes down to yourself and your mindset, your health, your spirituality, all of those things, mind, body, and soul, like you just said, those are the things that you can control. So going back to your story a little bit, what were the moments? I know you mentioned Tristan, which was a big wake-up call, but what was like the ultimate moment where you're like, I need to change something? You know, this is not the way I want my life to go. I'm just tired of living in this place of being depressed, of hiding, and not really facing my problems. What was that moment in your life where you just made that transition?
Yeah, seeing my best friend in a casket. That was it. And it's still hard for me to talk about it to this day, but like that moment changed everything for me, because it made me realize, like, this is, and I'm not trying to like speak anything negative, but it's just fact. Like, we're going to pass away at some point. Hopefully it's years, and you get to live to 200 years old. But seeing him in that casket broke my heart, because he committed suicide. And it broke my heart in so many ways, because I felt like, man, I mean, the first thing you do, if you ever have somebody close to you, lose somebody close to you, go through this guilt trip. It's like, man, like, I was so wrapped up into my own stuff. Like, I was actually partying when I got the call, and I was just, or when they said he committed suicide. And so it always sat with me. So I went to his service, and the promise that I made to him, and this is before really, like, I was Mr. Rehab time. I made the promise to him that I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life, like, helping people with self-worth. I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life getting outside of my comfort zone. And so that's what pushed me to be able to share my story. That's what pushed me to get on these stages. That's what pushed me to make these videos. And that reason is so deep. And this is the thing that I love to tell people, because, you know, sometimes we quit so easily on things. And sometimes we give up when things aren't looking a certain way, or, you know, with social media, people aren't following us or people aren't supporting us. And there's times when, you know, that happened to me. There's times where I was giving my all and it felt like nothing was happening. But I had a reason so real and so rooted and deep, which was him, that I couldn't quit because it wasn't about that, you know? So that was the moment that I made a decision. I remember at his burial, I said, my life, if I get to this place, when I get to this place, not if, when I get to this place, I'm going to make sure that I lived a life that helped other people, from my past, from my story. And I want to be that voice for people and that ear for people. And it changed my life forever. And he's more alive in my life than he's ever been. Like, people say, oh, you're reaching millions of people. It's through him that I was able to do that. And so it's just, I don't know, it's just surreal for me when I think about that.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I haven't lost anyone like through death in my life, but I have lost people who I love.
Yeah.
So I can know that feeling. And I think one thing that it does for you is it just puts things into perspective as what's really important for you. And even with my own struggles with this entire year, I like to call the year of 2019 a year of almost unbecoming and kind of digging down into the layers of what really the core problems are and what's past trauma is influencing my life. And it's been, for me, in a lot of ways, the hardest year of my life, but also the most purposeful. It's one of those years where I kind of look back and I'm like, I never want to go through this ever again. Like, this sucked so bad. But I also see the reason why I had to go through this.
Yeah, you're going to look back and realize this is the year that you're going to be most thankful for.
Yeah, and it's been the year of the most growth that I've ever had in my entire life, and I'm so thankful for it. But again, I never want to go through it ever again, but it allowed me to really be grateful for the things that I do have in my life and to realize what really is important to me. I even did an event earlier this year where they made us write out our own obituaries, and we had to write out how we wanted to even be remembered. And writing that out, you don't write about the car you drove or even like maybe your accomplishments that you got. You write about like the people you love and your relationships and how you've helped people. And that just really put even more so in perspective for myself what really is important. So with what you're saying is you found a why and a purpose that was greater than everything else, that was beyond you. And I think that's a really, really important point for a lot of people to understand, is finding a why and a reason that's greater than your excuses. That's greater than the reasons that why we want to quit and we don't want to move forward, because the reality is it's not going to be easy. And if you're pushing yourself, if you're doing things that are uncomfortable, you're going to want to quit. You're going to want to quit multiple times. But it's just pushing through that because you have a why that is so much greater than all of those excuses and even that hurt. So that kind of leads me into the next thing I want to talk about, which is purpose. And I think that's, I can even say that I've thought a lot about purpose this year. It's been a question that's popped into my head. So what advice would you give to someone who's searching for purpose, or they're just not really sure what their reason is to be on this earth?
Yeah, so this is probably gonna be a different take on purpose. And how I got to this place, just kind of explain a little bit. I actually, in my book, The Greatest You, I think it's chapter 2 or 3. It's I talk about purpose, and I actually wrote the chapter. And I had this realization maybe, I don't know, like 6 months after I wrote it. And I went back and scratched the whole chapter and rewrote it. Because the thing that I realized is that purpose is not something that you search for. And it seems crazy to say that because we always ask, like, how do I find my purpose? And the thing that I ask people now is like, where are you searching for it at? And a lot of times where people search for it at is in this world, right? I always say the negative 3 Ps, they search for it in position, they search for it in profit, they search for it in prize. So some people think, oh, if I don't have the CEO title, or if I don't have this sexy position job that, gets a lot of recognition, this can't be my purpose. Or they say, oh, if I'm not getting the prize, meaning recognition from this, or people aren't patting me on my back, or people aren't following me on social media, oh, this can't be my purpose. Or if I'm not getting profit from this, or if I'm making 6 figures or 7 figures, this can't be my purpose. And the thing that I tell people, like when I started Rehab Time, wasn't nobody bringing me in to speak, but definitely wasn't paying me to speak. Literally I was nickeling and diming it. Luckily I had a girlfriend, wife now, Maria, she held it down and she believed in me a lot, where she didn't put that pressure on me to be like, oh, you need to provide. She was the provider, and I was, hustling and doing what I could do until it got to a point where, Rehab Time actually grew. So I want people that's listening to this or watching this to understand purpose is who you are. Like there's no one like you in this world. And I know we've heard that before, but when you truly realize that and own that, when you realize your uniqueness is your greatest gift, nothing can stop you at that point. But we always trade in our identity for popularity. We always feel like we're not enough because we've been programmed since we were younger to make us feel like we're not enough.
Yeah.
Right? We're so influenced by everything, and we're human, so we're always being influenced, but don't be so influenced that you feel like that you're not enough. And so for everybody that, is struggling with purpose, I would just, because people would say, well, how do I find it? What you're looking for is not purpose, because you are that, but what you're looking for is placement, right? So the NFL wasn't my purpose, it was a placement. But I thought it was my purpose. And what do you think happened when I lost the NFL?
You lost yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I don't have a purpose no more. Rehab time, even now, I don't feel like rehab time is my purpose. It's my placement. And placement is where my life can be used most effectively. And so if I happen to ever stop doing rehab time or ever stop being a speaker or whatever, yeah, it might hurt a little bit, but I know that I can literally take my purpose, my life, to anywhere and make an impact. Some people might be thinking, well, I don't have value. I say, well, that's a lie, and I challenge you that. You do have value. Do this exercise right now. When you finish listening to this podcast, leave here or put down your phone or wherever you're watching it and go tell someone go give them a compliment. Tell someone, oh, you're beautiful, or I see you, I appreciate what you're doing, and I guarantee you light them up. And if you had no value, they wouldn't be able to feel value. And so when I'm going through my depressing moments, when I'm going through my low moments, the thing that I love to do is go on the internet and go remind myself, wait, I do have value to give, because I'm a human being. We go through those times too, and we go through those things too. So just kind of wrap that up. Purpose is who you are. It is not what you do. And I think when you understand that, it changes your life in a whole nother way.
I agree with that completely. And one thing I would like to add to that is I think purpose, one, always involves in the pursuit of helping other people.
Absolutely.
And it also involves what your gift is. And
Absolutely.
with what you said is just the avenue changes. I can relate to that with myself. So I started off as just a nutritionist, as just in the fitness industry, and that was my avenue to help other people. But as I've grown and I've developed, the avenue in which I want to do that has changed, with wanting to do a podcast, with getting a little bit more into public speaking. The avenue in which I want to do that has changed, but my gift on being able to empathize with people and being able to relate with people, it's always been in all of those different avenues, and it's always been in the pursuit of helping other people. So I think your outlook on purpose is one of the best that I've heard out of anybody that I've talked to, because oftentimes everyone's like, your purpose is going to be, whatever you're good at, whether it be a job, and it is searching for that purpose. But like you said, when you lose that job or that title, and I think we all want our purpose to be tied to a job, and it doesn't necessarily always have to be tied for a job. You may be able to live your purpose through your job, like you said, your avenue, but it's not going to always be your job. Maybe your purpose is like my mom. She is the best listener in the world, and she can relate to anybody. She is amazing at it, and she's an incredible mom with what she does, but her purpose is not tied to her job, but she is making an impact in her children's lives and in a lot of other people's lives around her. So, I love that point on purpose. One thing I've heard you talk about in some of your podcast is unbecoming and that purpose. Can you tell me a little bit about what that means? Yeah,
I think, we think that if we're not at a place where we want to be in life, which is a lot of us, we're always growing, we think that it's always something that we need to add to our life, right? Mm-hmm. We think that we're missing something, and we think, oh, if I had this, then everything will be better. A lot of people think, oh, if I had more money, things would be better. Or I had more significance, things would be better. And it might make things a little bit easier, but those situations that you're dealing with will still be there. The best illustration I like to use is, everybody wants a new destination, right? 2020 is about to roll around. Yeah. Everybody has their new destination or a new vision, as I like to say, where they're going. And it doesn't matter if the destination is different, if you still have the same mindset, right? If you're still carrying the same bags. And so I could go, this is a quick, funny story. So I was in Phoenix hiking. I had a plane to catch, and I was super sweaty. So I actually changed in the airport bathroom. I threw my sweaty clothes in my carry-on bag. And so for some reason, I don't know why I thought this, but I get on a plane, I get to the new city, and for some reason I was thinking my clothes would smell good. All of a sudden I opened up my bag and it just made all my clothes it was terrible. And it just made me realize, like, yeah, the destination changed, but when I unpacked the bags, that stuff was still there.
The stink was still
Exactly.
there.
Exactly. And it's the same thing with life. Yeah, you can have a new job, you can have a new relationship, you can have all these new things, but if you still have the same baggage when you get there, those things will still be there.
Yes.
So,
Yes, that happens so often. Like we get into a relationship and the relationship doesn't work out. But what do? We're like, okay, this relationship's over. I'm going to move on to the next one. And people just keep running into the same problems and the same problem and the same problem, relationship after relationship. It's like, well, what is the common denominator between all of these different things? It's you. You're not actually changing anything. So if you want to change the outcome and stop getting into these toxic relationships, you ultimately need to change yourself.
absolutely. And unbecome, peel back. So that's what it is. Not about becoming all the time, especially as you get older in life. It's about unbecoming, right? It's about peeling back that mindset, peeling back those habits, peeling back maybe it's certain relationships in your life and getting back to the core of who you are. And, that's a journey that I feel like, I mean, we're all on, and I think we'll be on until we actually leave this earth. I'm still on that journey. And the more you can peel back those layers and get back to the core of who you are, I think that's when life becomes a lot more beautiful.
Yeah. And I think when we're younger, we care a lot too. When you're young, you care a lot about what other people think, and to some extent, we're always going to care what people think. And we should care what people think. We should care what some people think. We should care about what your family thinks. You should care about what the people who love you think. You should take that advice. You should care what they think, but we don't need to care about what everybody thinks.
Exactly.
And I think that's the hard part. I hear too often, like, I don't give up what anybody thinks. And I'm like, we all care to an extent what some people think, and you should.
Yeah, you should.
But I like that with peeling back and becoming more of who you really are and just embracing that. And I think it does get easier as we continue to get older and we kind of get over a little bit of the ego and just also who we think other people want us to be as well too. And that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah, we try to fit into the mold of society. I mean, even from society standpoints of who society thinks you should be. I mean, even if we kind of flip the script when it comes, like, even with my profession, like there was a stereotype of a motivational speaker, like who society thought I should be. And I actually talked about this on my last podcast episode. I don't want to tell the whole story because we don't have enough time. But I remember when I first started speaking, like people would like pretty much prejudge me. It's like, oh, you don't have the suit on. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like if that's what I wear that at times, but that wasn't who I was. Like, oh, you have your dreads, you have a cap on backwards and you have Jordans on, and that's not the professional look. But I always told myself, I don't care about being professional enough. I care about being purposeful enough. And so I took a lot of flack, and people say, oh, businesses aren't going to bring you in to speak. And it happened like that. Like, cause I knew I could be a good speaker and impact, but I just knew that I didn't fit that mold. But as we fast forward now, you start to see the industry change and more people are relaxed. And now I'm able to go speak to these places and businesses and things like that. So I tell people, be who you are. Make the positive you. I don't want to tell, like, if you're negative and I'm just telling you to be who you are and just keep being negative, because people will take that out of context. But be who you are in a positive way, and just realize, make certain adjustments that you have to make. Like if you're out there watching this and you're trying to get a job interview, you can't, obviously you have to, dress up for that job interview and things like that. But don't think that you're not enough where you be someone else, because the world needs you. And that's one of the most proudest things that's the thing that I'm proud of most in my journey, is that I always stood up for what I believed in and who I was. And I mean, I think it paid off.
Well, I think that's why you are such a successful speaker in itself, because you're so unique and you're also very vulnerable. And I think it's very evident to everybody who hears you speak that you're just real. I mean, this is you, this is what you get, and that you're also passionate. And then you've gone through everything that you're talking about. You're not up there being like, you should do this, this, and this. And you're not living it. Yeah,
exactly.
You're not living it yourself. You're living what you're actually talking about. You are 100% embracing everything that you are. So I love that. One thing I've heard you talk about is being an introvert, and I can relate to that myself. So I actually this is a question for me, because I am the biggest introvert, and not a lot of people realize that. They'll look at my social media, I'll do fitness modeling, and I can put on, different images for those type of things. But I'm a terrible introvert, or not a terrible introvert. That's not the right way to put it. I'm an introvert, and I get really nervous when it comes to doing podcasts, when it comes to doing public speaking, but I also feel very alive when I do it because it is so uncomfortable for me, and it causes me to push my limits. And I feel like it's also, in a way, is unbecoming for me. It's becoming who I was meant to be, because a lot of people see me online from the way I've created my platform, which is Rachel the fitness model, Rachel the nutritionist, but they don't see anything deeper than that. They don't see the journey that I've walked through to get there, and all the struggles and the heartbreak that I've had, from childhood trauma to, the battles and how that's affected my entire life. So I feel somewhat of a calling to start opening up about that story, because I think I need it for myself, but also I think a lot of other people could relate to it.
Absolutely.
But being an introvert, and you saying you're an introvert, how have you gotten past the nerves with public speaking? Because I struggle with that every single time.
Well, just to kind of give you some comment, a lot of people that I know in this space are introverts. A lot of people that I've talked to, and it's just, when you're in your moment of like your gift or your calling, it opens up. So for me, I'm not shy. I'm not a shy person, but if you ask my parents, I have two older brothers. Like if they had to bet, like I would be the last that they would pick to be a public speaker, because I was a kid that was in my room, I stayed to myself. Mm-hmm. But I'm always observing. And so like, I feel like I observe so much, and I'm always like, in my mind so much, like I will miss exits. Like my wife gets mad at me because I'll be like in my head so much. She's like, Trent, you missed the exit. And I'm like, oh, my bad. So like, I'm always.
That is me to the T. Right. I'm always in my head. And then you're like, Rachel, you're not aware of your surroundings. I'm like, I'm just in deep thought.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think it works. It works well, because I feel like when you're on stage, it comes out. And so what's helped me get over stage fright is, and I tell myself before I walked in here, I always tell myself, stop being selfish. And what I mean by that is, if you're worried about like how you look, how you're going to sound, which we all do before we get on stages or before we do something, you're into yourself, right? And when you're into yourself, it's very hard to serve when you're trying to be perfect. And so I would say give yourself permission. Like I have this whole layout, but the first thing is give yourself permission to not be perfect. Give yourself permission, because I've had times where I thought I had the most perfect speech in the world. Like I was like, oh, I killed that. And, people respond to it. Then I had times where I literally embarrassed myself. Like I had times where I had two microphones and I didn't know, and everybody was laughing. I'm like, what are y'all laughing at? But it was those imperfect speeches and times where the most impact was made.
Yeah, you're more relatable.
Exactly.
He's a real person.
Exactly. Yeah. And so give yourself permission to not be perfect. Give yourself permission to quote unquote fail, because failure only exists when you're no longer trying. And before you do anything, I would have that conversation with your audience or who you're about to speak to. And that's what I do. I go through my head, okay, what does one person in the audience need? And I have that conversation. I learned this from Pastor Dr. Tony Evans, actually in Dallas, Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship. And his son, Jonathan, is a great friend of mine. And he told me that his dad does this. Like he pictures himself before he gives a sermon. He pictures himself at a table full of all different people. And he has these conversations. And it gives him a lot of inspiration when he goes out and speaks or preaches or writes to serve what those people need. And literally it works. And the more I get out of myself and I get into my heart, it takes a lot of pressure, because as long as you're up here, if you're operating from your mind, it's very hard. But when you operate from your heart, that just pureness of your heart, it becomes a lot easier. And so that's why I'm able to get on stages now and just be myself, like have fun, laugh, joke, and just know that I can not be perfect and still make impact.
And what is the message you're ultimately trying to get across versus how are people going to perceive you as well too? I think that's really important. And also, like when you start out, you're going to suck a little bit as well too. And I think a lot of people, they look at everybody else who's been doing this in the industry as well too. And I can even say I've done that. Like I'm just starting my podcast, gotten into public speaking, and I'm comparing myself to all these other people who've been doing it for years and years and years. And then that just is why I'm getting so nervous, because I'm like, I have to be like that. But the reality is you have to be okay with sucking a little bit. You have to be okay with messing up and not being perfect. And you know what? You will get better. But if you don't allow yourself to suck for a little bit, you're never going to be able to get better.
100%. Go embarrass yourself. Go, like I said, go, like you said, go suck. It's going to happen. And as you say, like, confidence is built with repetition. I mean, the more you do things, and the thing that I love to tell people is like, be that person, get comfortable with that person that nobody sees, but you know, like I always say, like the shower person, like, you know, everybody sings in the shower and you're just so open and you probably suck at singing, at least I do. But I've always said that's the me that's at my purest. And I try to bring that out as much as I can. And so I'm always still working on finding that person. How can I be secure and bring that person out? But that's the real you. And the more you can bring the real you to whatever you do, people will relate to you even more.
I like it. So moving forward here, I really want to talk about when someone is going through these trials in their life, because oftentimes emotions can be consuming and it's hard to see anything past that. I think it's even hard to think even logically when we're just so consumed by our emotions. And I know one thing I've heard you talk about is the 3 R's, which is the reality, release, and repair. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, that's my baby.
The rehab, I loved it.
The rehab process. What people don't know, and some people do because I talk about it, but this is where I teach from. Like in everything that I do. And this is a process that I go through every single day. And so the 3 R's, the rehab process it's pretty simple, but for some people it is hard to do. The first R is reality. And I kind of touched on it a little bit before, but the quote that I use where reality is, you'll never win your war by running from your battles. And you'll never fix what you're not willing to face, right? The things that you are in denial from, you will never heal. So acceptance, not acceptance is that, oh, this person, you're not accepting someone's behavior, someone did you wrong, but you're accepting that it happened. So I had to accept that the NFL was over, because as long as I'm holding on to something that's done, then that new thing can't be placed in my hands until I let it go, right? And I mean, if you just follow my story, you'll see that literally when I let go of the NFL, I'm not saying it was going to work out for everybody's life like this, but when I let go months later, rehab time took off.
Yeah.
And so what are you running from? Because you can sweep it under the rug all that you want, but you know that it's there, right? We can hide it from everybody. Like you said, social media, we're in love with our perception a lot, right? I know this might be a stretch to say this, but I feel like perception has become the God for some people. It's like how people perceive me, like I care about that. And you can fool social media, you can fool a lot of people, but you'll never fool yourself, right? You go to bed with yourself, you know what you deal with. And the more comfortable you can get with facing your truth, the more healing will come into your life, because you can never get there if you never go through it, right? If you stand in denial. And so that's the reality piece. And this could be in any area of your life. This could be from a fitness standpoint. This could be from an emotional standpoint, any area of your life. The second R is release. And release is hard, but release is very important, because you can face your reality all you want. But as we talked about earlier, if you keep those same habits, if you keep those same things in your life, if you never release the things, then guess what? Nothing is going to change. And people say, don't burn bridges. I agree to an extent, because there's certain bridges that need to be burned, because there's certain things your life cannot afford to go back to, whatever that is. So maybe it's your own habits. Maybe it's your own judgment. Maybe it's your friends. And I'm not going to talk about know your circle right now, because I don't want to end a lot of friendships, but maybe it's the people you're around, because I had to change that. And it was people that I liked, but I realized that me being in this circle wasn't going to get me to where I needed to go in my life. And I had a son that was going to follow my footsteps. So I had to say no to this group of friends in order to let go. So what are the bridges in your life that need to be burned? And how you can identify this is write a list. Write a list of all the connections in your life, because everybody's a connection. They're leading you to the better you, the greatest you, or a lesser you. And ask yourself that question. Is this person leading me to something better, or are they leading me to something worse? And if they're leading you to something worse, you have to make a decision to maybe love that person from a distance, have a conversation with that person, etc. After release, which is hard and it's good, but it's still not enough. Because if you release something, you still have a void in your life. And this process of the repair process is pretty tough, because the only way you will harbor true strength is you have to conquer pain in its deepest level. A lot of times we look for surface level solutions. So say a relationship, right? You're in a relationship and you might watch a video where it says, move on with your life, and you move on, but you never deal with the root issues. So my question to people is, it's not about necessarily a relationship, but why are you accepting less? Where did that come from? Like, is it how you grew up? Is it what you saw? Is it, maybe it's a relationship like 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago? Because if you never deal with that, then that problem will always grow back. It's like if you don't get down to the root and dig up the weeds, guess what happens?
Yeah.
Those weeds grow back. And so that's the repair process of asking yourself, I don't know if you heard of this, but I forgot the guy who actually made this, but my friend Dean Graziosi, he has it in his book, but he talks about, he has like seven layers of why, the question. And so you keep asking yourself, like, why am I accepting this? Okay, you get an answer. Okay, well, why is it that I'm accepting that? And you get down to that root issue. And I feel like when you get down to the root issue, you get that out, and then you can place new seeds in your life. And those seeds can grow and flourish without worrying about those weeds choking it off. And so that's my process that I go through almost every day in different areas of my life, whether it's business, professional, personal.
Yeah. I can say I've gone through that whole process this year. And I think that's why I loved it so much. You know, when I walked away from a relationship that was no longer serving me, you know, I love that person more than anybody in this entire world. And I think that was why it was so hard for me. But I also wasn't a priority, and I wasn't feeling valued in it. So I made that decision that I needed to go. And for a long time, I held on to that decision and almost avoided the reality of that. I walked away, that this was over, and I couldn't face that fact that it was over with what the reality was, until the pain almost became unbearable, where I had to essentially do what you said, which was release it. But there was a lot of other things within all of that was also causing a lot of hurt, a lot of childhood trauma that I had went through, where I was neglected as a kid, where I had all these feelings of not being enough, which was essentially triggered by leaving that relationship. All of those feelings came storming back. So for me, a lot of the repair process has actually been going through counseling and going through a therapy. And I'm not afraid to talk about it opening, because I think therapy is an amazing thing. And it's allowed me to really come face on with what the root cause is of all of this. So I can show up better for the people that I love in my life, but more importantly, for me. So I can become the greatest version of me, your words there with your book. But so I've gone through that whole process, not even realizing it. But when I heard you talk about the 3 hours, I was like, oh my God, that's literally what I've done this whole year. And like I said, it's been the greatest and most transformative year of my entire life. I do have one question, because I think it is easy for us to want to fall back, though, into a lot of these bad habits. Like, we can make all of these changes and then we can grow, but then we can relapse too. I like to use the term old self-gravity, or OSG. So what advice would you give to somebody to avoid falling back into OSG? Because I think there's different triggers and things that may want us to go back to, whether it be partying, or whether it be drugs, or whether it be that relationship. And you're like, okay, you know, I changed my mind and I want to go back to what we know in our heart was not right. So how can we avoid falling back into old self-gravity?
Yeah, well, I have a saying, three words: facts over feelings. You know, FOF, facts over feelings, because feelings are real, but feelings aren't always right. They're not. I mean, feelings can tell you, oh, I'm not enough, or just because you miss a person doesn't mean you need to be back with that person. And the thing that I see in relationships, and not to make this a relationship talk, but the thing that I see in relationships is, you know, so many times they think, or even I've been in a place like that in, you know, my previous relationships. We're always trying to focus on getting over that person, and you make it about the person. And I'm just like, that person controls so much of your past. Why are you still making it about them? Right? It's not about getting over them. It's about loving yourself more and doing that repair process. Because when you do that, you will get over that person, you know, in the process. You know, it is like basically takes care of both things. And so write down the facts. Right? Because you're going to, like you said, you're going to go through a vulnerability period, right? You're going to have voids. And for a lot of us, voids control our lives, right? So if the void of loneliness, anybody that makes us not feel alone, oh, that's the right person for us. If we have a void of significance, oh, that opportunity makes me feel significant. Oh, this is right for my life. And just because it seems right doesn't mean it is right. Just because that person appears right for your life doesn't mean they are the best for your life. And so when you're getting ready to go back to a situation, you got to have facts. I don't care if you write it on your phone. I made a video about this 5 years ago. And I said, you know, if it's a person that called you Pain, change their name from whoever their name is to Pain. So every time the phone rings, you see Pain, right? Or and it's funny, you know, but I had to do that even with friends. I'm like, not loyal, right? And it reminds you of those facts. And those facts trigger that. Or maybe if you're in an abusive situation, you take that picture, not to relive it, but you take that picture of that abuse, and every time you want to go back, you see that abuse. You're like, this is not love. This is what, and people can change. There was a time in my life where, I was never abusive or anything like that, but I wasn't, I was 21, 22 years old. I wasn't the man that I am now. And I lost a relationship. That girl left my life. And by that girl leaving my life, it changed my life. It made me wake up. She didn't benefit off the change, obviously, but I made the change. So yes, people can change, but sometimes it takes you walking away from them for them to wake up to actually make the change. And so facts over feelings. So write down all the facts and remind yourself when you have those vulnerable moments of those facts. And I think that'll keep you from going back.
I think that's really, really important to do. And I think when you also write it down, it takes the emotions out of it. So like we can always give the best advice to our friends, but then when it comes to ourselves, we just get so caught up in the emotions. So when you can actually write it down, what am I feeling? What are the emotions, but what are the facts of the story?
That's right.
What is the story that I'm telling myself? How can I actually change the story in a way that actually serves me, and helps me versus is inhibiting me as well too.
And also just to add, I think having someone that has your best interest in mind that will hold you accountable to that. Like when you're having those moments, you have that friend that checks you. Like, hey, I have friends now. Like, if I ever want to do something, they would be like, nope, you're not doing it. You're tripping. Yeah. So you got to have those people in your life that call you out when you're tripping and when you want to go back.
Oh yeah, I think that's really important. So, with this last part of the podcast, because we are running out of time here, I want to talk about moving forward into 2020. So it is the end of a decade here, and a lot of people are coming up with New Year's resolutions on, what they want to do. And most of the time, it's weight loss, all of those different things. Personally, I'm not a fan of New Year's resolutions. I think they're BS. But I do believe, of course, in setting goals. I have nothing against that, but just needing a new year to make a change. I don't think that's necessarily. So can you touch a little bit on your perspective on New Year's resolutions?
Yeah, I'm right in the same boat with you. If you need a new year, and this might offend some people, I might step on some toes, but it's the truth. If you need a new year to get excited about your life, then you have a problem. You don't need a new year. All you need is a new moment. Mm-hmm. Like literally, when you watch this podcast or whatever in your life, that moment, you can say, okay, this is my new beginning. Mm-hmm. All you need is a tomorrow. All you need is a next second to decide. We wait for New Year's resolutions because the emotional piece tied to it. And most times, as we know, what happens is we get to, when real life hits you, it's like the gym, right? The gym, I don't like going to the gym from January 1st for the first month because I know it's packed. But I know right when February hits, it'll be right back to its regular scheduled programming. Why? Because that commitment has left. And my definition of commitment is staying loyal to what you said you were going to do long after the mood you said has left you. So find one area of your life that you can focus on that will help change. For me, last year was health. Like that was my thing. Like I was 30 pounds heavier. I lost myself from traveling and speaking, eating whatever, not staying loyal to my routines. And I focused on my health. That's all that I did. And by me focusing on my health, it created energy that helped me in so many areas of my life. Mm-hmm. So maybe what's that one thing that might seem minor that will make major changes that will be contagious throughout your life?
Yeah.
And find a real reason, a deep enough reason, or why, as like we like to say, that will anchor that for you for the rest of 2020. And it's about progression. As long as you look back at the end of 2020 and say, man, like I'm further along than I was at the beginning of 2020, that's what life is about.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually did something interesting the other day. So people were talking to me DMs about New Year's resolution and setting goals, mainly pertaining to weight loss. And I actually decided to write out for my life my mission, my vision, and my values. And we do that all the time for jobs. What is the mission of this job? What is the vision? What are the values? But no one's ever really done that or we haven't really ever done that for ourselves in our own lives. So I literally wrote out what is my mission? What am I ultimately trying to accomplish? And for me, I want to impact people's lives. I want to help them overcome past trauma, hardship, and to help them become the best versions of themselves through mindset, through fitness, and through nutrition. That is my ultimate mission. And then what is my vision? So looking forward at 2020, what is my vision for this year? What are the things that are going to help me accomplish my mission? And then what are my values? So those are the things that are the non-negotiables in your life. That could be your family, it can be integrity, it can be your health, and everything, all of your vision and your goals and everything you're doing here in 2020 needs to align with that. So it's more so about like you being purpose. What is your mission? And then the vision you have, the things that are going to help you accomplish that mission. And then what are the values? What do you value most? And all of it needs to fit together. So I came up that with the other day, and I thought that was a really great idea for people just to put everything into perspective for themselves.
Well, the reason why too you hit your goals is because of the standards that you live. And this is kind of a thing where I don't want to say goals are bad to have because everybody has goals, but I want people to even dive in deeper, which really helped me be consistent, is goals are something that you reach. How many times have we reached a goal and we get there and it's like, oh, I'm here, our fitness goal, right? You reach your weight loss goal, your weight gain goal, and then like you chill and get back, right? Same thing with me in the NFL. I made it to the NFL, but I didn't have anything deeper. So I tell people to develop standards, make it a goal to make that thing a standard. Goals are something that you reach, standards are something that you live by. So just imagine if you lived a healthy lifestyle, that was your standard, you would hit those goals, right? And you would continue to progress throughout it. So people watching, listening to this and watching, like, what's going to be those standards that you said, values that you have, that's going to be things that you live every single day, and then you hit your goals by default.
Yeah. And also, is it important enough for you?
Yep.
You know, I think oftentimes people, they're like, I struggle with discipline. You know, I'm lacking the motivation. You just all honestly need to sit back and like, do I really want this?
Absolutely.
Is it important enough for me as well too? And a lot of that's going to help you put into perspective with your goals and ultimately what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So looking forward to the next year coming, what are some things you have going for you? I know you just launched a new podcast. I think you have a book coming out. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my new podcast is called Straight Up. The book is called Straight Up too. But I'm super excited about it. I mean, people have been asking me for years to do a podcast, and so I finally pulled the trigger. And the podcast is live now, so you can any place you listen to podcasts, it'll be up.
Okay.
And then my new book, I'm super excited about it. I was excited about The Greatest You. I still am. But this book, I feel like if you watch my content, you're really going to feel in this book like, dang, I feel like I'm watching one of Trent's videos. And so that comes out in May. And then for me, it's just, you know, continue to get on stages and impact lives. And, you know, I always say, like, I don't want to put this on anybody because we're all different, but I don't forward think like way, way out. Of course, I have a vision that and a destination that I go for, but I'm always like, what's the focus for this month? And what's the focus on this month so I can really be intentional with it? So, yeah, those two things are my main things for 2020.
All right. Awesome. I love it. So you guys check out his book when it comes out. His podcast is live. I've listened to a little bit of it and it's been very, very much motivational for me. So I think it's going to impact a ton of people's lives.
Thank you so much.
So where can people find you on social media? What is the best place for them to reach you?
Yeah, so any social media site, just put in Trent Shelton, I'll pop up. I actually just got on TikTok. What's my TikTok name? I think
TikTok.
it is Mr.
I need to get on that
it's
still.
the Trent Shelton. So I'm on TikTok. I don't have any, but by the time you watch this, I'll have something up. So
Okay.
yeah, YouTube Trent Shelton and Facebook Trent Shelton, Instagram.
Awesome. All right. Well, if you guys enjoyed today's podcast, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, share it with a friend, leave a review. I always love to hear your guys' feedback. And if you're not following Trent on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, you definitely need to do so. He is making a difference in millions of people's lives. He's done so for myself, and I honestly think he'll be able to do the same for you. So thank you so much, Trent.
Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate you.
Sorry, no.